Welcome back to our C Sharp beginner tutorial. In the previous lesson, I think we looked at subclasses and polymorphism. In today's lesson, we're going to do a little revision. We're going to look at something we've looked at before, access modifiers. Let me just bring up Notepad. So we've looked at access modifiers before, but we didn't. There are actually three different types of access modifiers. There's public, there's private, and there's protected. So the reason why we're coming back to revise is because we only looked practically at public and private. We mentioned protected, but we didn't look at protected. We didn't see what the protected keyword does. So in this lesson, we're going to see the differences between public, private, and protected. Okay, so let's head back to Visual Studio. Or before we do that, let me just give, let me try and give definitions or explanations of the differences between the three. So as we said before, when you use a public modifier on an item or a member or class or anything, when you use a public modifier on anything, that thing becomes accessible from anywhere. So public allows uh, what it allows what it modifies to be accessible from anywhere within your program, within your source code. Let's say within your source code. Okay, from anywhere within your source code or from anywhere within your program. Let's just use program. So from anywhere within your program. Okay. Um, for private, if you use private, it disallows. Okay, so it's just private is just the opposite of public. It disallows accessibility of what it modifies. Well, not exactly the opposite, because for public it allows accessibility from anywhere, whereas for private it doesn't disallow accessibility from anywhere. The only place you can access, okay, so there's an exception. It disallows accessibility of what it modifies from anywhere within your program, except, okay, so except the class in which it was used. Okay, so usually if you have a class, okay, and within the class you have a member that you modify as private. Okay, so you say a particular member of a class is private. Still, while you're coding within that class, you still have accessibility to that particular member. You can still access it. But apart from within the class, any other place, maybe in another class or in another uh, what's that word? Um, in another class or in another, I can't remember. There's a word I'm looking for. Let me see if I bring this up. If I'll probably remember. Uh, Namespace. That's the word I was looking for. So private disallows accessibility of a member as long as it's not in the class or it's in another namespace. Okay, so that's the difference between public and private. Now for protected, the reason why we left out protected up until this point is because protected is only, you will only see the usefulness of protected when you treat subclasses. So that's why we left it out until after we treated subclasses. So usually for protected, it this allows accessibility of what it modifies from anywhere, or from anywhere within your program, except, okay, so there's an exception for the protected, just like private. However, you would see that the protected is more it's a bit more loose than private. Private is more tight, like it only allows you to access it from the class, okay? But for protected, the exception includes except the class one, that's the class in which it was used, the class in which it was used, that's one. And so there's still other places where you can access that member, even if it was marked as protected. And subclasses, or instead of saying subclasses, we could say descendant classes. Okay, now the reason I'm using descendant classes and not subclass, because if we say subclass, it might give the idea, suppose you have a class A, okay, and you extend, let me just draw that. So suppose we have a class A, right, and we extend A to create another class, okay, to create another class called B. Okay, now if we say subclass, you realize B is a subclass of A, right? Now what about if we again extend B to create C? Okay, so now C becomes a subclass of B, right? And B is a subclass of A. Now if we use subclass here, it will give the idea that if you mark a member of A to be protected, it kind of gives the idea that only within A and B that member is accessible, okay? But that's not the case, okay, as you will see. Protected, that's why I'm using descendants here. And let's use an S, descendants, okay? Is that the spelling of descendants? I think it's an A, okay, descendants, okay. So as I was saying, that's why I'm using descendants here. So it's not just limited to B, okay? So suppose you have a member in class A that you mark as protected. Now that member, you will be able to access that member while you're coding inside class A. At the same time, you'll be able to access that same member while you are coding within class B, okay? Because B is a subclass of A, okay? At the same time, you will also be able to access that member while you are coding class C, because C is a subclass of B and B is a subclass of A, which makes C a descendant of class A, okay? So that's why we're using descendants here, okay? I hope that makes sense, okay? So that's what the protected keyword does. So you notice, suppose you mark a member private in class A, okay? That member will not be accessible in class B, okay? It will not be accessible in class C. However, if you mark a member in class A to be protected, that member will be accessible in A, in B, and also accessible in C, okay? If you have another class D, which has no relationship whatsoever with class A, then in that case, you will not be able to access that member from class D, okay? So that's what the protected does. It protects the member from classes that are not related in any way to that, should we say, descendants or family tree, okay? I think we should head to Visual Studio and see some examples, so we get a good idea of what protective does. Okay. All right. So I'll go ahead. For that, I'll just open our previous program. I think this is it. Yeah, this was the previous program we did. And if you remember, we have two classes. We have Dragon and we have Fire Breathing Dragon. I remember we also have a program class. We said the program class is where the main method of the program exists. So usually execution starts from within the program class. So technically, we actually have three classes. Okay. So what we're going to do is, you can see that Fire Breathing Dragon is a subclass of Dragon class. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a member in the Dragon class. Okay. And we're going to make it protected, and then we'll create another member in the Dragon class. We're going to make it private, and then another member yet again in the Dragon class, and we're going to make it public. So we have three different members with three different access modifiers, and then we're going to see the differences, okay, what they do. Okay. All right. So in the already we have this flying method in the Dragon class that is already a member, and it's public. It's marked as public. So we already have a public member. Next, we're going to create a private member. So let's go ahead and say private. Let's see. What are we going to? Let's say number of claws. Does that make any sense for a dragon? Number of claws. Yeah, why not? Let's do that. So we're going to say int number of claws. So that's the claws that the dragon has. Okay. Supposing we're assuming that depending on the particular dragon, each dragon can have different number of claws. Okay. So maybe there are dragons that have 3 claws, other dragons have 4 claws. Okay, I know I'm not being original here, but yeah, let's just do that. Okay, so we have a member that is marked as private, and it's an int. It's of type int, and it's called number of claws. Okay, so finally we're going to need one more member. Okay, we're going to make it protected. Notice that this member is a field, okay, whereas this is a method. Okay, keep that in mind. And so we have a protected member here. Let's see. Okay, let's say the name of the dragon, right? Okay, let's say string. We're going to say the name. Okay, so that's the name of the dragon, and it's a protected member. Good. So I've done that. I'm going to go to file and save all. Yeah. So we've saved that dragon class. Good. Now what we're going to do is, first let's go to our fire breathing dragon, okay, which is a subclass of dragon, and try to access these 3 members and see what happens. Okay, so in our fire breathing dragon class, okay, we're going to say under breathe fire, we're going to try to access those 3 members. Okay, so we're going to say to do that, I'm thinking of how we're going to access its superclass. Okay, to access the superclass, I think there's a keyword for that. The keyword is base. Okay, I think I didn't mention that, so let's go back to Notepad. Okay, I think that's a keyword you should know. So we go to Notepad and we write the keyword. Okay, this is the keyword base, B-A-S-E. Okay, so if you are within a subclass, okay, and you want to access the superclass, that's the class you extended to create this subclass, the keyword you use for that is base, base. Okay, so that's what this keyword is meant for. Okay, so if I write base here, I'm referring to the super class, or the class which we extended to create this class. Okay, all right, so I'm going to say base dot. Now notice what I have in the options. I have fly method. Okay, so I can call base dot fly. I also have name method. Okay, that's base dot name. However, I do not have access to number of clause. Okay, because number of clause is private. Remember that this was marked as, name was marked as protected. Okay, but because fire breathing dragon is a is a subclass of dragon. Okay, even though it is protected, it is still, that's even though the name field is protected, is marked as protected, it is still accessible within this class. Okay, so within this fire breathing dragon class, you can see that protected allows accessibility within here, same as public. Okay, because the fly method is public, so that's why we can say base.fly, and we can also say base.name. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show. Let's go back to our program class now. Okay, and we're going to try to access those three different members. Okay, so in here we have dragon1 equals new fire breathing dragon. Okay, let's just remove all this. Okay, let's remove all that. Let's just create a new fire breathing dragon. Okay, fire breathing dragon1 equals new fire breathing dragon. Okay, so I've created the object and I've stored it inside dragon1. Now I'm going to say dragon1 dot. Now notice what is accessible to me. Okay, I have access to breathe fire. That's one, because breathe fire is public. If you remember fire breathing dragon, you can see breathe fire is public. That's one. I have access to fly, because fly is inside the dragon class, which is a super class of the fire breathing dragon. Okay, and it is marked as public. Okay, so that is why I still have access to this fly method. Okay, because it is marked as public. Remember, public allows a member to be accessible from anywhere within your program. Okay, remember, we're accessing it from the program class now. Okay, now notice, apart from those two, we do not have access to number of clause, because it is private, and private do not allow accessibility from outside the dragon class. Also, we do not have access to name, because name is marked as protected, and we are actually calling from the program class. Notice that the program class has no relationship whatsoever with the dragon class or the fire breathing dragon class. Okay, these two are somehow related in that the fire breathing dragon class is a subclass of the dragon class. Okay, so that's why from inside this class you can access a protected member of the dragon class. However, from the program class, you do not have access to protected members of the dragon class. That's why if you say dragon1 dot, you do not have options of name. Okay, if you try to force it and say dragon1 dot name, notice the error is going to give you notice the error you're getting. It's saying dragon.name is inaccessible due to its protection level. Okay, so the protection level is protected. Okay, and since it is protected, that's this name member is protected, you cannot access it from outside the class, or you cannot access it from a class that has no relationship with the dragon class. Okay, since the name was created in the, or was defined in the dragon class. Okay, and it's marked as protected. Okay, so that's all for this lesson. I just wanted to show you the differences between public, private, and protected. So those are the three different access modifiers, and those are their jobs. Okay, so I'm going to stop the lesson here, and I'll see you in the next lesson.